Hello everyone, and welcome to another episode of the Daily Gwei Refuel, where I recap the latest news in the Ethereum ecosystem. I'm your host, Anthony Sassano, and today is the 30th of November, 2022. Alright everyone, let's get into it. So a fresh update on the Mevwatch.info website today to their censorship offenders leaderboard. Now what they've done is they've listened to our feedback and my feedback as well, and now they've defaulted the offenders leaderboard to percentage of blocks enforcing censorship by each entity. And if you go to the Mevwatch.info website, you can see this in action. So you can see here the staking entity, the total blocks that it's producing, the amount of blocks that are censored, and the percentage censored. And you can toggle this as well. So you can toggle percentage censored. Well, I guess the toggle's not really working for me right now. You can toggle between the two here. So basically this shows you the amount that is censored with the entity producing the most amount of blocks, ordered by the amount of blocks, and this shows by the percentage of their blocks that are censored. So you can see here that Stakehound, Cream Finance, Ether Capital, and Ledger Live, which are big staking entities, are all 100% censoring. So that's obviously very disappointing to see. In terms of well-known names, you have Binance and Bitfinex here, both over 90%. Lyra is at 79%, Kraken at 75%. And then you can keep going down the list, right? And on the bottom, you've got two entities that are at 0%, KuCoin and Vitalik. Of course, Vitalik is at 0%. I'd be pretty disappointed if he wasn't, right? But yeah, he's there at 0%, which basically just means that they're not using censoring relayers if they are running MEV Boost, right? So yeah, this is a welcome change here. But also I went onto the Mevwatch.info website today, and I noticed that we're back under 70% enforced OFAC compliance on the one-day time frame. Now I've explained before that you can't just look at one day, you have to look at longer periods of time. So if we change this to 7-day, it's still at 72%. 30-day is at 72% as well. But I mean, as I said the other day, I didn't want to call it too early, but it seems that we've kind of topped out at around 70-75%, and the trend is coming down. And you can see the reason over the last days, because if we go and sort by the relays themselves, blocks are at max profit, cracked the 20% adoption barrier, and Flashbots is under 70% itself. Now, obviously, Flashbots is not the only relay that is censoring, but that's the big one, right? So we're getting better relayer diversity. And I would also say it has to do with what Flashbots, the research that Flashbots released the other day, where if you set your minimum threshold to 0.05 ETH on your on MEV Boost, even if you are using censoring relayers, most of the time, or I think a lot of the time, I don't know about most, but a lot of the time, you're going to produce blocks that would not have censored anything because they're not high value blocks. So that's obviously a very welcome change that has probably played out in this as well as obviously the relayer competitive landscape being a lot better. I'm expecting more relayers to come online over time as well, and obviously Mevwatch.info will add them to their website. And you can see in the chart here as well, this playing out. If you include all blocks, you can see basically what it looks like, but then if you untick include all blocks, which I think is better, you can see the green is increasing with the red decreasing over time. Obviously green is good, red is bad there. So yeah, we're reversing course, it seems. And as I said, I don't want to speak too early, but if this continues, we are having a really fun time here and reversing course, which is awesome to see. And I've explained before how tackling this issue of censorship on Ethereum is not a it does not have a one-size-fits-all solution. It's not just a singular thing. It's not like we're just going to get PBS and CR lists and everything would be fixed. And obviously those things aren't coming for a while. So what could we do in the meantime? Well, there's been plenty of things that we've done in the meantime, right? First of all, we have a website to actually track this stuff. That's incredibly important, and kudos to the Labris team for building Mevwatch.info. We need better relayers, or at least better relay infrastructure and better relayer landscape, and that's what we've had. We've had more relays spin up. We need everything to be open sourced as part of the MEV Boost suite, which has happened. Flashbots has open sourced everything. They did the builder the other day, which is the last piece that they needed to open source. We have the additional stuff like Flashbots' research that they published the other day about setting that minimum block profit threshold, I think it was called. And maybe I'm missing some stuff here. I guess like something that's not live yet, but that will be coming relatively soon is staked ETH withdrawals, which is obviously very important so people can change who they stake with. Because if you stake with a centralized exchange and they are using censoring relayers, well, you can exit, but there's kind of a discount right now on that. So if you were to exit, you would take a bit of a haircut. And if you're staking with a centralized provider that doesn't give you an LSD, you may be wanting to wait till withdrawals come out out so that you can withdraw and go with someone that's not censoring, or maybe you have enough ETH now that you want to solo stake. So you want to basically take your ETH out and go solo stake it without taking that haircut as well. And obviously solo stake and not contribute censorship to the network. So there's lots of different things at play here, and I am more hopeful than I've been. I mean, I've always been pretty hopeful that the Ethereum community will solve this issue. But the thing is that it's kind of funny because it hasn't been that long, right? It's August 8th, the sanctions came into place, and then shortly after that, the relayers started censoring, and then we had this massive, very quick growth of censorship on the network, and I guess like of Tornado Cash censorship. And you can see here, this tracks back this chart to September 16th, so about 5 weeks after the sanctions came out, and the adoption was very, very quick already. And then you can see here of the MEV boosted relayers on October 27th, which is just over a month ago, 97% of them were quote-unquote OFAC compliant, which means 97% of the relays were censoring. Now, if we look at what it looks like, there's only 77% that is censoring of the relays. This does not include all blocks. This just includes MEV boosted blocks, so the relays themselves, and the trend is down here. So, I mean, it's just been great, and it's given me a lot of hope that the Ethereum community can really come together and solve this issue without needing to even change the core protocol, right? Because there's been no core protocol changes yet that affects this. This is all stuff built around the protocol that does not require the lengthy process of the EIP process, and then the governance process, and then the getting it included in the network process. Like, that's all very lengthy. So we're doing a lot of things around that. And I will say that, funny enough, when all is said and done, and when the Ethereum network implements all these solutions, because there's still plenty more down the pipeline, when these things get better, when we do things to also make Ethereum more private, make it so that MEV, we get rid of as much MEV as possible, Ethereum will be a much stronger and much more censorship-resistant network than it otherwise would have been if not for the OFAC sanctions. As I've always said, the OFAC sanctions are a fire under our ass to get our shit together to make sure that Ethereum is actually censorship-resistant. And as I've also said plenty of times, the censorship is really a consequence, at least right now, of MEV boost, right? Of MEV, I should say, and MEV boost enabling it via relayers to centralize like this, right? But the problems of censorship on Ethereum have been, I mean, on blockchains in general, have been known for quite a while, and Ethereum is doing a lot to build on that front, not just for the MEV, MEV context, but also other context that could rear their ugly head in the future. So great to see this, but yeah, hopefully this trend down continues. I'll be watching this closely. If we can get under 50% relatively soon, that'd be awesome. Obviously, we want to get to as close to 0% as possible. I don't think we're ever going to get to 0% again. Like, as long as relays exist, it's going to be very hard. And also, you can never really prove that it's 0% or 100%. Even these numbers are estimates, because you can't really prove things. You're basically taking the word of the relayers, and I mean, if they're not open source, then you have to basically trust that they're telling the truth, right? And I mean, you can test if they're censoring or not, but you can't you can test if they're censoring, but you can't really test if they're not censoring, obviously, because your transaction will get included. You can test if they're censoring by sending censored transactions and then watching if their relayer, if it has enough kind of market share to get picked up, sort of thing, actually censors that, and then you can test that. So it's always estimates. It's never going to be exact, but it's pretty good. And as I said, a huge kudos to Labris for building and maintaining this website. It is a very valuable community resource. All right, John Wu from Aztec Network had a great little tweet today that I wanted to talk about. So he said, FTX, BlockFi, Voyager, Celsius, these are not crypto failures. These are failures of basic operating principles and corporate governance enabling financial mismanagement and malfeasance at massive scale. This point is so great because it hits the nail on the head. These centralized services are not crypto, right? When we talk about crypto, we're talking about the actual networks and the actual kind of like decentralized networks that are powering all of this. FTX, BlockFi, Voyager, Celsius, all these CeFi companies, they run on centralized databases. There is literally no difference between them and banks and financial service providers and stock brokerages and prime brokerages and all that sort of stuff. There's no difference there at all in terms of the actual centralization, in terms of the business practices that they have to adhere to, the regulations, all that stuff, right? The key difference is that these entities hold crypto, or at least majority of crypto, instead of the TradFi assets, right? Obviously, they hold a lot of currency as well, like fiat, like US dollars and Australian dollars and other such things, but they are not crypto. When we talk crypto, we talk about like the Ethereum network and DeFi and NFTs and all that good stuff. We're not talking about these CeFi institutions, because as John says here, the reasons they failed was because of the TradFi world, because of the meat space world, not because of crypto. DeFi has its shortcomings, and there's not much true DeFi out there in terms of like actually being properly decentralized. But and obviously the problems with DeFi come in the form of hacks as well. But they are actually crypto that is being built on chain. It is not regulated by, the stuff that happens on chain is regulated by the Ethereum network. It is not regulated by a third party. It's not regulated by a nation state or a government. The Ethereum network regulates what's built on top of it. What's built on top of it has to adhere to the Ethereum network's rules, and that's that. Whereas FTX, BlockFi, Voyager, Celsius, and all these other CeFi platforms, they don't have to adhere to any network rules, any crypto network rules at all, right? Obviously, if they want to transfer crypto in and out, they have to follow the rules of the network to do that. But in terms of actually operating as a business, they are not regulated by the networks that they support. They are regulated by the nation state that they are part of. So Coinbase, for example, and Coinbase isn't obviously part of this list because they're good actors and they haven't blown up, but Coinbase is regulated by the US, right? By the US government, by the financial regulators in the US. They are not regulated by the Ethereum protocol. The Ethereum protocol can't go to Coinbase and say, hey, you're not allowed to do this because it goes against our rules. That doesn't happen, right? The only entity that can go to the Coinbase and say you're not allowed to do this is the US government, because they are the ones that regulate them. So I think this is a very, very big distinction that needs to be made and needs to be shouted from the rooftops, especially to mainstream media who may not understand this, is that these things have nothing to do with the crypto technology. They support crypto in their own ways, of course. They use crypto. They may interact with these networks themselves as entities, but I've always said you can actually think of these entities, if you want, in simple terms, as just like an individual, right? You can think of FTX as an individual. Yes, it's obviously not an individual, but in terms of the way they act, and in terms of who they are, it's the same thing. I, as an individual, can use the Ethereum network. FTX, as a company, or as a former company, can use the Ethereum network in the same way. They can do the exact same things I can do on the network as long as they follow the rules. But FTX is a big-ass company that was a big-ass company, right, that was supposed to be regulated by all these things and supposed to be managed by people who knew what they were doing. It was supposed to adhere to corporate principles and all this sorts of stuff, and they didn't do that because there's actually no way to force that in terms of like enforcement. There's no way to actually force that enforcement, whereas on chain there is. On Ethereum, you cannot break the rules of the network unless you take over the whole network, right? That's the whole point of decentralization, is that on Ethereum I can't go and say, okay, well, I want to give myself 100 ETH out of thin air, right, for doing nothing. I can't do that. That's against the rules of the protocol. The only way I could do that is by convincing the rest of the network to actually credit me 100 ETH in my account, which will require a hard fork to do that because it's in a regular state transition, and I would basically get that free ETH. But that's not going to happen for obvious reasons. I'm not going to detail why. Whereas we saw what happened with FTX. They took customer funds, they did whatever they wanted with them, and that was that. I can't go and take anyone's funds. I can't give myself anything. I can't, unless there's a bug in a smart contract, I can't hack that I can't just like go to that smart contract and withdraw funds that are not mine, right? So from that perspective, the difference, I think, is pretty big. And I'm glad John Wood put this tweet out. But I could go on about this for a long time, but obviously I won't because I've got other things to get through. But I just thought it was something worth speaking about today. All right, so Sigma Prime has a new blog post out today titled Optimizing Attestation Packing. So Satalia helped shed new light on this difficult optimization problem, setting the course for the next phase of block production. And now, for those of you who don't know, Sigma Prime are the developers behind the Lighthouse Ethereum consensus layer client, so they know a thing or two about attestations on the Beacon chain here and things like attestation packing. If you want to see the results and read everything got to do with that, you can in this short blog post here, which I'll link in the YouTube description below. But I just wanted to put this on your radar if you're interested in Ethereum staking and getting into the weeds a bit about that and how the Beacon chain works under the hood. This is definitely the read for you. So I'll link it in the YouTube description below for you to check out. All right, so Patches here from the Rocket Pool community put together a thread titled The Rocket Pool Rescue Node. So Patches starts off this thread by saying, after the merge, Paupers, I don't know how to say this, again with the mispronunciation of things, presciently set up a spare beacon node to allow Rocket Pool node operators to have a fallback while the client teams race to fix stability issues. The node is behind a Cloudflare, Proxy, and Nginx instance. The former provides it with reasonable protection against DDoS attacks, and the latter allows him to inspect inbound traffic and prevent MEV/tips theft. Access is limited to smoothing pool members. Access URLs are given out ad hoc. Since then, we've been iterating on the design and are now developing a self-serve rescue node service. Any Rocket Pool node operator will be able to request a temporary credential and avail of a fallback while doing pruning maintenance. This is really cool. I mean, you can read the rest of this thread. I'll link it in the YouTube description below. But for those of you who don't know, as a Rocket Pool node operator, you have the option to set a fallback client pair. So if anything happens to your clients and you obviously sent offline because of it, and to your local clients, you can have a fallback pair that basically kicks in when that happens. Now, you can have your own or you can use a third party, and that's the whole point of this Rocket Pool rescue node service. But there are I guess like a bunch of issues with that, such as potential theft of tips and MEV, and also centralization concerns, which is what is discussed in this thread here. But they also answer the question, like, is this trustless? And as Patches says, no, to be very clear, you use it at your own risk. You are trusting the maintainers not to attempt to steal your tips/MEV while using it. However, your keys stay in your custody the entire time, and the maintainers will be publicly identified. So this is just another thing for you to, I guess, use if you are a Rocket Pool node operator, if you are fine kind of trusting that these operators are doing what they say they are doing. As I said, it's not trustless. They explain that here. The thread you can check out for yourself. But I think these kind of community tools are always important to highlight because it does add to, I guess, decentralization in its own way, even if it's a centralized service. And it does add to the, I guess, social cohesion of a community like Rocket Pool, where they can basically be like, hey, you know, we've got this cool Rocket Pool rescue node service that you can use if you want to use that. It adheres to the ideals of the Rocket Pool network and their principles of it. The people running it, Rocket Pool maximalists, so to speak. So go and check this out. Obviously, it's not trustless, but it's still something that you can use, and it's completely optional as well. So yeah, as I said, I'll link this thread in the YouTube description below for you to check out. All right, so Ryan Berkman's here posted a Dune chart that I think I've highlighted before, which is the percent gas spent by L2 proof contracts of the total max daily available Ethereum gas. Now, I haven't checked this in quite a while, but it is growing, and I'm not surprised that it is growing because L2s are growing. So you can see here that since July 2021, when I guess activity started picking up in earnest, you can see here that the percentage of gas used by these L2 proof contracts on L1 was very small. And just eyeballing it here, it was maybe 0.1% of gas used on the network. Now, since then, it's been about 18 months, and we're up to basically over 4%, as you can see here recently, right? So in 18 months, we went 40x essentially. Now, we're not going to go 40x from here, obviously, because that would be more than 100%. But basically, this is what's expected of the Ethereum network over time to become more and more just block space for L2s. Now, as Ryan notes here, the chart below should continue growing steadily until 4844 goes live, at which point L2s will switch over to using the new block space and will have scaled 100 times overnight. So obviously, this isn't going, as Ryan says here, this is going to come down a lot because of 4844, but I don't think that means that the growth has stopped or anything like that. People are just going to have to adjust the way they look at this chart and look at these metrics in order to account for that. But still, this is just absolutely amazing. And I've had a lot of questions lately around Ethereum block space and people asking, and they've been asking this for a while, but they're asking it again. Will L1 block space just be, too abundant, and will L2s not replace all the block space that isn't being used by people on L1? And will we actually have, a lot of fee burn? Will it be negligible? I think there's always going to be people on L1 for one reason or another, at least for a very long time, for 5, 10, 15 years. I think people are still going to be using L1. I think that the fees are still going to go up during periods of volatility. There's still a lot of liquidity on L1. There's still going to be I mean, L1s are still going to be the most trustless and decentralized place and most censorship-resistant place, funny enough, for you to do your transactions on for the foreseeable future as well. And I think just generally there are a lot of players who don't care about the fees. Even if the fees are like $100, $150 or something like that per transaction, they don't necessarily care about that. And then also, if L2's grow as big as we think they are going to grow, they're going to eventually use up all that additional block space that they're given, and we're going to have to keep scaling. That's why 4844 isn't the end of scaling. It is really just the beginning of scaling layer 1, where we add that proto dank sharding in, and then when we get full dank sharding, which probably won't come for a few years still, that adds even more capacity and other things that we're doing with vertical trees and things like that as well, and potentially even in just increasing the L1 block size generally, which would apply to all of dank sharding. That all coming together, I mean, I really do think that we're going to have enough block space for quite a while. But I also think that with with L1, people are still going to use it for quite a while as well. So yeah, it's kind of like people are going to use both for the foreseeable future. But if you ask me what the space is going to look like in even 10 years, even though I think people are still going to be using L1, I mean, the vast majority of people will be on L2s. That's just the way Ethereum is being designed, and not just L2s, L3s and higher layers than that, right? People are going to be sitting on there doing their stuff. A lot of people aren't even going to be aware of what a gas fee is, because the layer that they're on will just be paying that for them and taking fees elsewhere and monetizing elsewhere. So yeah, so thanks to Ryan for highlighting this chart today. It's something that I hadn't looked at in a while, but very interesting to see that it's growing. All right, so I think we have the biggest announcement of the last 24 hours to cover now, which comes from Phantom. So Phantom, for those of you who don't know, is a wallet on Solana. Now, people have been big fans of this wallet for quite a while. It has a very good UI UX. I've seen a bunch of videos on it. I've gone on the website and checked out all the various things that they offer and all their features and things. And it's a browser extension wallet. And it is a massive step above, I think, MetaMask. And I know that's not necessarily hard to do, but considering MetaMask is quite rough around the edges, and I've explained why in the past. I think that they're just sticking with that and just sticking with being the most reliable and robust and secure wallet, rather than going with all the fancy features, which is totally fine. But Phantom, and the reason why I'm talking about them is not because they support Solana, but because they announced support for Ethereum and Polygon POS chain today. So this is a huge announcement because, as I said, like, they've been on Solana traditionally, and now they're embracing Ethereum and the Polygon POS chain, and they're probably going to add support for other chains in the Ethereum family, like the L2 chains and potentially other side chains as well, which is obviously a very big deal. Now, I do want to say one thing here, that Phantom is not open source. Now, this is why I haven't used it myself. The Phantom, and why I won't use it, even though they've got Ethereum and Polygon support here. The fact that it's closed source is a no-go for me. A wallet, in my mind, cannot be closed source. I kind of find it insane that people would use a closed source wallet, but I mean, I understand why it's closed source. I mean, one, they obviously want to protect what they've built, but that goes completely against the ethos of the Ethereum community. But at the same time, they're coming from Solana. They're not coming from Ethereum. So in Solana, actually, a lot of things are closed source. So it's all about an ethos and principles thing. Now, with Phantom on Ethereum and Polygon now, we can push them to open source. And whether that works or not, I don't know. But we can keep pushing that. We keep saying, we want to use Phantom, but we want it to be open source. This is Ethereum. We like things open source. And as I said, whether they do it or not, up to them, but I personally won't be using it because of that. Now, I want to also say that just because it's closed source doesn't mean there's anything nefarious happening, but if I don't know and I can't look at the code myself and I can't get my friends who know how to read the code to look at it, and other people can't audit it freely, I can't trust it. I can't trust it with any of my money. I can't even trust it with pass-through using my hardware wallet. And I think that for me is just I guess like a binary thing. Like, you're either open source or not. Even if you were like source viewable, where you're not open source in that people can't copy your code and can't use it, but you're source viewable where I can actually see the code and read it myself and be able to tell what it's doing, and other people can do that as well and point out if there's anything dodgy going on. I think that would be just just fine. Like, it doesn't need to be like fully open source. It just needs to be source viewable so that people can verify that. But yeah, I don't want to harp too much on about that. I think it's just really great that they're expanding to Ethereum and Polygon and not just staying on Solana, because, MetaMask, it's funny because MetaMask they didn't really expand to other chains because you could always add your own RPC on there. And MetaMask is really just like an EVM wallet when you really think about it. So it's going to be interesting to see if they announce support for Solana. I don't think they will, to be honest. I think that MetaMask being backed by Consensus and Consensus being owned by Joe Lubin, who for all intents and purposes would be an Ethereum maximalist because he is an Ethereum co-founder. I just don't think MetaMask would bother working on Solana support, especially since Solana already has Phantom, and I think they have a bunch of other wallets as well. And also, I mean, if you're in Ethereum, you kind of don't believe that Solana is going to be long-term relevant anyway. So yeah, I mean, I don't know. I don't speak for the MetaMask team, but still very cool to see that Phantom is supporting Ethereum and the Polygon POS chain here. Don't let my comments around it being open source or not dissuade you from using it. Maybe you just use it for low value things. Maybe you just use it for NFTs. Everyone knows they're worth zero these days because all the NFTs went to zero, right? But no, seriously, just be cautious of that. I think that's just a warning. Just be cautious that it's closed source, not open source. But again, that doesn't necessarily mean it's bad. It just means that you can't actually see what they're doing. But at the end of the day, the company's doxed, the people behind it are doxed. If they do anything dodgy, I mean, I'm sure it'd be illegal, but we all know that even if they're doxed and what they do is illegal, it doesn't necessarily translate to anything useful for you. Because one, SBF is still out there. Two, he had all the funds and he lost all the funds. And three, people that had their funds on FTX may not get back anything if, maybe they'll get back like 10% of what they had on there. So when you think about it like that, that's why I think it's very important to make sure that the things that you're using are secure and open source. All right, so an update from StarkWare. So they've said StarkNet Mainnet Alpha has been upgraded to version 0.10.2. Expect an improved TPS in the upcoming StarkNet versions, with sequencer parallelization already deployed on Mainnet, a new Rust implementation for the Cairo VM, and SQL re-implementation in Rust. And you can see these blog posts here titled StarkNet Performance Roadmap, with a TLDR that says validity rollups are not limited in throughput in the same manner as L1s. This gives rise to potentially much higher TPS on L2 validity rollups. StarkNet Performance Roadmap addresses a key element in the system, the sequencer. We present here the roadmap for performance improvements. Sequencer parallelization, as I just mentioned. I mentioned these things just before. And provers, being battle tested as they are not the bottleneck and can handle much more than they do now. And then they go into detail about how this all works. So if you're interested in that, I'll link this blog post in the YouTube description below for you to check out. All right, so Beacon Chain has added a few more bits of data to their website here. So they say, slowly but surely, you will find more execution layer data on Beacon Chain. Mempool view, pending transactions, gas now /1559 burn, execution layer data on the validator page, and more. So you can see they've added them here to Satolia, which you can check out. Satolia is the testnet. I don't know if this is live on mainnet yet. It may not be. I don't think so. But yeah, they're just adding more and more information here that you can use to view things as they kind of happen here. So yeah, definitely go check this out. I'll link it in the YouTube description. All right, finally, we have an announcement out of Lyra today. Just a disclosure here that I am a Lyra investor as well. But yeah, I mean, they announced today that they've raised an additional $3 million from Framework Ventures and GSR. This will serve to diversify the treasury and bolster the long-term resilience of the protocol as the primary source for options liquidity in DeFi. Now, for those of you who don't know, Lyra is an options protocol on Optimism, and they're part of the Synthetics ecosystem. They've been around for a little while now, but yeah, congrats to them on this raise. Very cool to see them raising in a bear market. As I said, guys, like, just because it's a bear market doesn't mean teams can't raise. And if they want to raise, if they want to get some money under the belt to increase their runway, then this is the way that they can do it. So yeah, I mean, good on Framework Ventures and GSR for backing this team here. I mean, as I said, I am an investor in them. I know them. They're fellow Aussies, and I really think what they're building is super cool. I'm not someone who plays around with options myself, but I know that they're very popular in CeFi, so let's bring them to DeFi, right? I mean, at the end of the day, we're not going to get people to go from CeFi unless we build more compelling things in DeFi for them to use, and things that are actually on par with the CeFi offerings in terms of like obviously speed, scalability, fees, but also giving the additional benefit of things like self-custody, especially in the wake of the FTX collapse. So congrats to Lyra on this raise. But I think on that note, that's going to be it for today. So thank everyone for listening and watching. Be sure to subscribe to the channel if you haven't yet. Give that video a thumbs up, subscribe to the newsletter, join the Discord channel, and I'll catch you all tomorrow. Yep. Thanks everyone.